This is Matt Kozlowski. I'm the Vice President of Professional Services at Kelser Corporation. With me today, I'm pretty excited. I have Art House from the State of Connecticut. So Art, want to just share a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do for Connecticut?
Yeah, sure. I most recently was chairman of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority in Connecticut. And then in October of 2016, Governor Malloy asked me to be the Chief Cybersecurity Risk Officer, which is the position I have today. And he asked that I do two things, working with Mark Raymond, the Chief Information Officer of Connecticut. The first is to create a cybersecurity strategy for Connecticut, for the state and state government, municipal government, the private sector, higher education, and law enforcement. And then secondly, to turn that strategy into an action plan. We've completed the first part. The governor announced our cybersecurity strategy in July of 2017, and we're now working to turn it into an action plan for those 5 areas.
So tell us a little bit about the strategy itself. Like, what does it encompass? What kind of went into making it?
Yeah, well, the strategy has a few principles, 7 principles that we think apply throughout business, government, private world, everyone. I'll give them to you real quickly. Executive awareness and leadership, cyber literacy, preparation, response, recovery, communication, and verification. And we applied those to the 5 areas I spoke of: the state, municipalities, private business, higher education, and law enforcement security. And we set goals for each of those areas, and we're now turning those into actual action plans. So we're partway through. We've got some work done in state government, in higher education. We're doing some work with law enforcement, and we're proceeding. But the threat continues. I should just say, Matt, that it's not as easy as setting a strategy and an action plan and then declaring victory. Offense is much easier in cybersecurity than defense is. And every day we get reports of some new breakthrough in offense. One of the most disturbing ones was at the National Security Agency recently, in which word not only that some of our own tools that we had developed to break into the cyber systems of other countries, not only had they been stolen, but they were being turned back and used against the United States. So the point being that even if the top intelligence and defense agencies of the United States can be hacked, then anything can be hacked. And we have evidence of that going on all the time. So this is a growing problem, not a diminishing problem. But a lot of the responsibility has to lie with the states.
Sure.
We're in charge of critical infrastructure, for example. And Connecticut has made a lot of progress in working with the public utilities of the state. And that's one of the areas in which we've made the most progress.
How would you say Connecticut falls into line relative to other states in the country? Are we leading the charge? Are we hopefully not, but behind? Where would you say we're at?
Well, two answers, Matt. One is that we are leading the charge. We're out in front. Secondly, that's not cause for comfort.
Sure. Got it. Yep.
There are 2 reasons why we are considered. The national media often refers to us as being out in front. And the other day, one of the national experts said that Connecticut is the gold standard for strategy and so forth. But it's not something we can take a lot of comfort in. First of all, we were the first state to create a program by which the state would review annually the cybersecurity defenses of our public utilities: electricity, natural gas, and water. It provided that there would be an annual review, that the standards would be picked by the utilities, and that there would be 4 state officials participating. We did that in 2017. We issued the report recently, and it's very comprehensive. What makes it very interesting. It was done by collaboration rather than by a legal fiat or a mandate or a formal docket within the Utilities Regulatory Authority. So in that sense, I don't know of another state which is doing that kind of collaborative review of the state of cybersecurity with the utilities. The second thing is that we have a strategy, and it's a comprehensive strategy. The other day, the former Assistant Secretary of Defense, Paul Stockton, said that Connecticut was the gold standard in creating a strategy. Now, the State Department in Washington has some countries that it's concerned about because of their cyber vulnerabilities. Obviously, Ukraine is one of them, but there are some other Black Sea countries, and it selected Connecticut to help work with them to make our cyber strategy available to these countries. And so I've been doing that for the past year. I'm using that as an example because it's a concrete instance of the fact that Connecticut being a bit out front, the United States is using us as a model to help other countries who are friendly to the United States to strengthen their cybersecurity defenses.
And I imagine that in turn helps us too, right?
It really does. I got to tell you, Matt, that I would rather sit down and talk with a country that has been attacked by Russia or penetrated by a foreign power and has had to recover from the attack, or is seeing the attacks all the time, as Ukraine is. But you don't have to convince them that cyber is a weapon and that cyber is dangerous. They know about it. They're living it all the time. Their experiences are far more valuable to us in the United States who are trying to prepare and prevent that from happening than a whole bunch of seminars and webinars and theoretical exercises. These people are on the front lines, and yes, we learn a lot from working with them.
Okay. Now, specific to Connecticut, are there any threats that we face specifically? I mean, we have a sub base here. We have a nuclear reactor, for example. Anything along those lines specific to our state that concerns you, keeps you up at night? What do you think there?
Yeah, I used to work in the intelligence community under the Obama administration. I was with the Director of National Intelligence. And when I got this job, I went down and saw some of my former colleagues. And I said, when you look at Connecticut, what is that question? The question that you just posed, Matt. What should we be worried about?
Yeah.
They came up with a short list. They said, look, first of all, critical infrastructure, but that's the same answer we give for every state. The fear being that someone could penetrate electric distribution, shut down the availability of electricity for a population for a prolonged period of time. So for every state, critical infrastructure, public utilities is number one. But they say when you look at Connecticut, you got a lot of defense industries up there. And we make submarines and helicopters and jet engines and so forth. So the defense industry is one. Another is financial services and insurance, because we have so much of that. Sure. So, but each state has a different profile. We hope that these 7 principles that I just listed for you can be applied flexibly to anyone, not only those areas of special interest, but to any company or a school system or a municipal government, because they do apply. And as I don't need to tell you, Matt, but I mean, the security is not a state. It's not a situation which exists. It's a constant battle. So every day there's a new threat, and every day we need to be doing everything we can to contain that threat.
What's your kind of along those lines about it being a constant state? It seems to me that in some ways people maybe have become numb in certain ways, because there's so much cybersecurity in the news, and either they're separated from it or they've just kind of become numb to it. What would you say to that population of people where they're, well, I'm going to get hacked anyway, so?
Well, I think you're right, and I appreciate you pointing that out. That's right. There are far too many people who say, look, there's nothing I can do about it. No, there are all kinds of things you can do about it. Secondly, you do not want to be hacked.
Sure, right?
I mean, think of the terrible things that can happen to you in life. You do not want them to happen, and you certainly do not want to have someone else penetrate and take advantage of your system, whether you're a personal individual or a company or a branch of government or whatever. Connecticut, just for example, we have coming into Connecticut on just every single month, we have about there are 4.8 billion with a B connection attempts between the statewide network and external systems each month, inbound and outbound traffic. 2 billion of the 4.8 billion are blocked because they don't fit our protocols. And a lot of those are nefarious, which could really do extreme damage. Just email. Coming into the state, there are about 38 million email connection attempts every month, of which 85% are blocked. 85%. Now, to answer your question, what could happen if you were complacent and you didn't care about it? I mean, your business obviously could be subject to a ransom attack. You could lose intellectual property. You could use personal data. What is sellable on the market are health records, personal identifiable information such as name, rank, serial number, social security number, and so forth. Already, 3 things that have been stolen in Connecticut that of great concern to us. Just for example, are the plans for the F-35 jet fighter, the plans for the Black Hawk helicopter, and for the Aegis missile defense system on ships. Now, I mean, just think of the years and tens of billions of dollars that go into developing those programs, and people have stolen them. I mean, nation states have stolen them. So the damage that can be done to an individual with an identity theft, to a company with ransom theft or intellectual property theft, or to the United States by the theft of our weapon systems or other kinds of things. No, the potential damage is massive. Sure. But you're absolutely right. I run into that complacency every day. Someone saying it'll happen to someone else, or for businesses, it's costly. And every dollar you put into cybersecurity defense may be a dollar that does not go into product development or marketing or salaries or whatever. So it's not easy. It's very difficult, and it is costly to have a good cybersecurity defense system.
Sure. Now, Art, what kind of piece of advice would you have for either businesses or even a municipality that's just kind of like, they agree now, like, I don't want to be complacent with this anymore, but I don't even know where to begin. So what would you recommend?
I would recommend that they download the Connecticut Cybersecurity Strategy.
I like it.
Of July 10, which is available on our website, and start there. I would recommend they look at those 7 principles. But then,
actually, do you want to just share your website real quick too, so people have that?
Yeah. Let's see. Yes, you go to State of Connecticut. You go to Cybersecurity, and there it is. Or go to Department of Administrative Services, BEST, Bureau of Enterprise Systems Technology, and there it is. Okay. Well, just to give you a little bit about what you can do, in state government, we're asking that state agencies use the NIST, National Information Systems and Technology standards, that they report quarterly on risks, that they educate employees on cybersecurity awareness, use procurement and audit responsibilities. We want 20% of our security personnel to be trained thoroughly in this by January of 2012. We need workforce employment, supply chain. And municipalities, 5 years ago, a lot of municipalities did not have an information technology, a chief information officer, never mind a cybersecurity officer. And a lot of towns still don't. They're too small. So what they have to do is to start with the basics. And they have to have firewalls, and they have to follow those 7 principles. And why? Well, 2 reasons. We have had towns in Connecticut that have been subject to ransom attacks for their fire and their police services. And if you don't pay, you could lose the ability to communicate with your police force and your fire department for a period of weeks, which is absolutely unacceptable. Obviously, you can't be living in a town that has no ability
Yeah, right.
to operate in public services like that. And secondly, they have public information, which could be very damaging. They have tax records, they have personal information, and so on. So, yeah, this is now a responsibility not only of state government but of municipal governments as well. And they're starting to rally. They have that starting point, and we're working with them in an action plan to come up with concrete steps that they can take to protect themselves and the citizens in each town.
It would seem even as a kind of a taxpayer of a town that you should start maybe asking your town like what they're doing for cybersecurity and like maybe, you know, as an individual get involved and start rallying the cause so that, you know, not just businesses but towns, I guess, take it seriously as well.
I agree. Yep. It's a good question to ask. And today there are more and more municipalities that have good answers for that, and some don't. So I agree. Go ahead and ask and see what your own town is doing.
Sure, because there were a few serious W-2 leaks even over the last year, I think, right?
W-2, help me out. What do you mean by that? The W-2 forms.
Yes, the tax forms.
Yes, there was a scam in one town, and that happens around. Especially around in March when you're putting together your
tax time.
your tax time. That's right, and you get an inquiry and so forth, and people provide information to it. Yeah, that's right. There are very clever scams of all sorts. Question them. If it doesn't seem right, it may not be right. Call someone up. If you get an email that doesn't quite seem right and it's asking for information, don't give it, or sure. call up the sender and saying, I got this email from you. Is that from you? Why do you need it? Be suspicious.
Okay. How about kind of circling back to the strategy? That's pretty exciting to me that there's there is a framework that you all put together in place that not only the state and municipalities can take advantage of, but businesses as well. When we talk about putting that into an action plan and then kind of taking action on it, how far along are we with that? Maybe in just general terms.
Well, I'd say we're maybe halfway there.
Okay.
Let me take an example.
Sure.
Of the field of higher education, which is included. There are two main tasks facing higher education in Connecticut. One is to protect the institutions. Now, higher education is not designed to hamper the flow of information. It's there to share it. You go to a college or a university in order to learn, and you put things online, and you have course materials and articles and books and lectures, and you're trying to get a large volume of information into the hands of the students who can use it. That plus neither students nor faculty are inherently suspicious and wary of the cybersecurity threats surrounding them. They are open environments. They have to be. They're research environments. They want to share information. Problem is that at an academic institution, you have thousands of students and employees with valuable information. And
sure.
So you have to educate them that there are dangers. Beware of phishing attacks. In which it looks like there may be an official communication coming out from the university or the college saying provide this information. So the first task is to put protection into education, mm-hmm. which by its very nature is more given to sharing and to learning than it is to protecting and restraining. Sure. The second thing is that there is a very real need for training of cybersecurity people in Connecticut. Now, there's a heat map that you can go to that shows where the jobs are. Where are the jobs? What is the level of job demand? That's a better way to put it. In the United States right now, it's about 350,000 cybersecurity jobs unfilled. In Connecticut, it's about 4,000. These are good jobs. I mean, you can get out with a 2-year degree. You can get out and you can start making $50,000 and north of that right away. They're good jobs, but we are not producing them in Connecticut. The total production, the total education of cybersecurity graduates in 2016 was fewer than 40. So we are producing less than 1% of the gap of 4,000. I mean, of 4,000 in Connecticut that business wants. So it's not a marketplace. If these were widgets, somebody would find a way to produce more widgets and sell them. They're not. It's far more complicated than that. But in higher education, we need to retool and redesign so that we can produce here the good paying jobs that businesses want. Businesses, because it's so hard to get cybersecurity professionals, it's a form of stealing from other companies. So a big company finds a very good cybersecurity professional, and a medium-sized company offers a higher wage and gets them, and it moves on down. So that there's a manpower training factor here that higher education. Now, if those are the needs, what do they do? And we're talking with Connecticut's colleges and universities, the Department of Education, Department of Labor, and so forth, to see what we can do to fast track the acceleration of the training of those people. So those are just two specific challenges. Okay. In one area, and that's what we're doing in the action plan.
How about what would you say is what's kind of next for the task force? Even if is there something in the works for businesses?
Matt, I have to say that people are concerned about the budget in Connecticut is an understatement. There is no task force. I have no staff, no employees, but there is an effort, which it's a collaborative effort. We're calling on people to help do it. So in that sense, the task force is everybody that this affects. And we are working in those 5 areas to come up with specific task force, specific action plan objectives that can be achieved in the near term and over long term, applying the 7 principles to each area. In law enforcement, for example, strategy identified 2 specific things we wanted in law enforcement in Connecticut. One was to strengthen our ability to access and analyze intelligence about cyber threats. And the second was the creation of an investigations unit in Connecticut to work with the federal, the FBI and federal officers and municipals. So those are 2 concrete things that we're doing. Just as, for example, in education, I talked about the protection of institutions and production of cyber warriors. Within state government, we got a whole bunch of them. We got, by January 1st, 2019, we would like 20% of the state security personnel to be trained in cybersecurity methodology. We're working with CBIA, Metro Hartford Alliance, Fairfield County, all the different business associations we can, and with particular sectors such as banking and insurance and defense, to try to do what we can to help them to focus on cybersecurity. I would not be surprised if in 10 years there would be very widespread cyber audits for companies, just as there are financial audits now. The reason, obviously, you and I can't decide, we can't determine what the financial health of a large corporation is, but we as a public have a vested interest in knowing how safe their finances are. And so they bring in an auditing firm, and they use generally accepted accounting principles, and they report on it annually. We may be getting to the point where there will be cyber audits as well. And there will be letters written as to how safe major corporations are, because our security, our employment, and the well-being of the state depend upon it. So I'm trying to work on a collaborative basis before we get to that kind of a system of how can the state work with the private sector in order to, strengthen cybersecurity defenses and, prevent a penetration or a disaster from happening.
What's the best way for someone to get involved in that if they wanted to, or is there an avenue for involvement?
I am arthur.house@ct.gov.
There you go.
Let me know.
I like it.
We
That's
can
perfect, Art.
We can use all the help we can get.
That's good. Well, Art, I really, really appreciate taking the time to chat with us for a little bit today. I hope this was certainly educational for me, and I hope it's beneficial for everyone that hears it as well.
I hope so. It's a very important public issue, and I'm glad that you're taking the time to share information about it, Matt. It's good to talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Art.